Okay, let's jump right into it. If the sheer spectacle of a rocket launching into space still gives you goosebumps, you're definitely our kind of person.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But getting there, that's a whole other story. It's complex, engineering, physics, logistics, and it doesn't always go perfectly smooth, does it?
Not at all. Space is hard, as they say.
Exactly. So today, we're taking a deep dive into a mission that really puts all of that front and center. The Axiom Mission 4, AX4, we're going to unpack its goals, where it stands right now, and maybe what the story of just getting it off the ground tells us about, the changing world of space exploration.
And the sources you shared with us, well, they give us a fantastic window into all sides of this mission. We've got everything from the real nitty-gritty technical details of the rocket itself to the fascinating science they plan to do up in orbit, and even the bigger picture, the context of what these private missions mean for the future. It's a really rich set of material to explore.
Absolutely. So our mission here, really, is to sift through all that, pull out the most important nuggets, the surprising bits, the key insights, and just make sense of it all for you.
Consider us your guides on this.
All right, let's unpack this then. What exactly is the Axiom Mission for? What are we talking about here at its core?
Okay, so at its heart, AX-4 is a private astronaut mission. It's heading to the International Space Station, the ISS.
Right.
It's organized by Axiom Space, that's a private company. And this will actually be their fourth flight, to this station.
Fourth already. And the crew list for this one is particularly interesting, isn't it? It's not just the usual folks from NASA or ESA.
Not at all. And this is, I think, one of the first key things from the sources. This crew really highlights how access to space is broadening. It includes Indian Air Force Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla.
Okay.
And his inclusion is a huge deal for India's human spaceflight program. The Indian Air Force even called it, opening a new chapter in the Indian space odyssey. Plus, the mission marks Poland and Hungary returning to human spaceflight. First time in over 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah. And it's the first time all three of these nations will have people on the ISS together on one private mission. That tells you something right there about how commercial space is changing who gets to go.
That's genuinely exciting, seeing new flags, new countries sending their people up, and they'll be riding on a vehicle most people have probably heard a lot about, the SpaceX Falcon 9. What did the sources tell us about this workhorse rocket?
Well, the Falcon 9 is definitely SpaceX's go-to launcher. It's a two-stage rocket powered by their Merlin engines. They burn liquid oxygen, LOX, and rocket-grade kerosene, RP-1, basically.
Right.
The really big story with the Falcon 9, and it's central to SpaceX's whole approach, is reusability. That first stage, the big, expensive part, it's designed to land back on Earth so it can be reflown. The goal is, drastically lower launch costs. That changes the whole economic picture for getting to space.
Makes sense.
And for this specific mission, AX-4, the crew will be flying in a brand new Crew Dragon capsule, sitting right on top of that Falcon 9.
Okay, so a proven rocket design, maybe a booster that's flown before, but a fresh capsule for the crew.
Got it.
And once they launch successfully, how long are they planning to stay up there?
The plan is for the mission to last up to 14 days docked to the ISS. So 2 weeks. That's enough time to get a pretty significant amount of work done aboard the lab.
Okay. Now, getting to space. That's the tricky part, and the sources make it pretty clear this mission has faced, well, its share of bumps in the road. What's been causing the launch delays we've seen reported?
Yeah, you're right. It hasn't exactly been a smooth path to the launch pad. The sources detail multiple delays, and they're primarily pointing to technical issues with the Falcon 9 rocket itself, though weather, as it often does, has played a part too.
What kind of technical issues are we talking about? Anything specific the sources really highlighted?
Yes, they do. They point to two main problems that popped up during the pre-launch checks. One was a liquid oxygen leak, an LOX leak found in the booster's upper stage.
Okay.
Now, here's a really crucial insight from the sources. This wasn't described as just a new leak. It was called a recurring issue from its previous mission.
Wait, recurring? A recurring LOX leak? That sounds pretty significant. How do you miss that or not fix it properly?
Well, that's kind of the question the sources raise, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really highlights a key challenge. LOX is this supercooled propellant. It's critical for stable combustion. A leak isn't just wasting fuel, it's a safety issue. It affects performance.
Right.
The fact that it was recurring suggests maybe complexities in inspecting and refurbishing hardware that's flown multiple times. SpaceX VP William Gerstenmaier was quoted mentioning they hadn't fully fixed it initially or maybe missed it during refurbishment. And they were working on installing a purge system to try and mitigate it this time, basically flushing the area with gas to keep propellants from building up. It's kind of a workaround, but it points to an underlying issue.
Okay, a workaround. So that's one issue. What was the second problem they flagged?
The other issue was a malfunction in the thrust vector control system, the TVC. This is the system that actually steers the rocket by slightly swiveling the engines.
Oh, okay. Crucial.
Absolutely essential for keeping the rocket on course during ascent and for landing the booster. SpaceX confirmed they found the specific components causing the trouble and replaced them.
So even with rockets that have flown hundreds of times, I think the sources mentioned the Falcon 9 Block 5 has launched, 380 times. These kinds of significant technical challenges are still popping up.
Exactly. And this is another really key insight, both from the sources and the discussion they document within the space community. These issues, especially a recurring one like the LOX leak, really spotlight the ongoing engineering hurdles of operating highly stressed, frequently reused hardware, especially under immense pressure to maintain a fast launch cadence. It's not just about building it right the first time. It's about keeping it at peak performance, flight after flight after flight.
Speaking of that community discussion, the sources also mentioned some talk happening within the space community about maybe why these kinds of issues might be appearing more often or at all. What are people speculating about there?
Right. And it's important, like you said, to frame this as community discussion and perspective, not necessarily, official confirmed findings.
Sure.
But the conversation, as the sources reported, is pretty insightful. Some people in the community are wondering if the incredibly high flight cadence that SpaceX maintains, could that be a factor? When you're processing hardware that fast, could things potentially get missed during inspection or refurbishment?
That seems like a natural question to ask. I mean, it feels like the faster you try to go, the harder it might be to catch absolutely everything, even with really good teams.
That's one line of thinking that's been raised, yeah. Other factors discussed in these circles include things like potential personnel turnover, maybe a loss of that deep institutional knowledge if experienced engineers move on to other projects or leave.
The human factor.
Exactly. And there were also some concerns mentioned about management, perhaps setting timelines that are, let's say, potentially aggressive, which could put pressure on the teams handling these really complex systems.
So it sounds like the community conversation, based on the sources, ties potential technical hiccups to a mix of things. The inherent difficulty of reusing rockets, the sheer pace of operations, and maybe even some human factors or company culture elements.
I think that's a fair summary of the different perspectives being discussed. It really paints a multifaceted picture of the challenges involved when you try to scale up space operations to this kind of unprecedented level.
Okay, let's move beyond the launch itself, because this is where it gets really interesting for me. Assuming they get there smoothly, once they do make it to the ISS, what is this AX-4 crew actually going to do during those 2 weeks in orbit?
Yeah, this mission is definitely not just a taxi ride. It's absolutely packed with purpose. The sources really emphasize this. The crew is scheduled to conduct around 60 different scientific studies and activities.
60. Wow.
And what's remarkable is these projects represent collaborations with institutions from 31 different countries. This is apparently the most research and science-focused work ever planned for an Axiom space mission to the station. That's a pretty significant indicator of how these private flights are being used now.
60 experiments in just 14 days. That's a huge workload. What are some of the standout projects? Or maybe the ones with the biggest potential impact?
The variety is just incredible. It spans everything from fundamental biology to advanced tech. In human health, they're doing studies on bone health, muscle function, how microgravity impacts the brain, changes to our gut microbiome, all really vital stuff for understanding how the body adapts, or maybe doesn't adapt, to spaceflight.
Standard but important space health research.
Right, but here's one that's truly groundbreaking. An experiment called Sweet Ride. It's specifically designed to demonstrate that astronauts who have insulin-dependent diabetes can actually be medically supported safely in space.
Wow, okay, that is a potential game changer. That could significantly expand who is medically cleared to travel to space down the line. What else caught your eye in the science list?
Well, they're working on growing crops and algae in space. Obviously critical if we're serious about developing sustainable food and life support for longer missions, say, to the moon or Mars.
Makes sense.
They're testing how stable various drugs are when they're exposed to space radiation. You need your medical kit to work on those deep space journeys. There are also tech demos, like evaluating wearable biomonitors that use advanced nanomaterials for tracking astronaut health.
Nanomaterials, cool.
And yeah, you might have seen headlines about this one, or even flying tardigrades. Those incredibly tough little water bears.
Tardigrades in space.
Yep. They want to see if a specific gene from a tardigrade can help protect yeast cells from the damaging effects of microgravity.
That's definitely unique. It really shows how that microgravity environment lets you do research you just couldn't replicate down here on Earth.
Exactly right. And the mission also includes several tech demonstrations beyond just health monitors. They're testing things like edge computing, basically processing complex biometric data right there on the station to assess crew readiness.
So faster analysis on the spot.
Precisely. Evaluating using ultrasound for joint health in space, seeing if an AI algorithm can pick up subtle changes in astronaut voice patterns, which can indicate stress or health issues.
Interesting.
And even demonstrating geolocation using imagery taken from orbit. It's a very practical set of investigations aimed at making future spaceflight safer, more autonomous, more efficient.
And it sounds like they're connecting all this incredible work back down to Earth through education as well.
Absolutely, and that's a major focus highlighted in the sources. Though talking with students via amateur radio, the ISS ham program, they're actually running experiments designed by students from places like Brazil and Nigeria, giving them direct access to doing science in microgravity.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And there are also specific STEAM outreach activities planned for students in India and Hungary, including creating a 3D video tour of what it's like on the ISS. It's really all about inspiring that next generation of scientists and engineers globally.
And of course, many of the insights they gain from this microgravity research, they can have significant benefits right back here on Earth, too.
Oh, precisely. Whether it's improving our understanding of human aging, osteoporosis, developing new materials, better telemedicine techniques, the unique stresses and conditions of space often accelerate discoveries that are directly applicable to challenges we face right here on the ground.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit then. This AX-4 mission, it isn't just happening in isolation, is it? It feels like a very clear signal of this massive shift that's underway in space exploration.
It absolutely is. For decades, space was overwhelmingly the domain of national governments. There are big agencies, NASA, the Soviet program, later the European Space Agency, others. That picture is fundamentally changing right now.
We're seeing the really rapid rise of private companies playing much bigger roles. Companies like SpaceX, obviously, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and Axiom Space itself, the ones running this mission.
Exactly. These private entities are actively working to make space access more frequent, trying to make it more affordable, especially through innovations like reusability, which SpaceX has really pushed.
Yeah.
And ultimately, their goal is to create a sustainable commercial market in space. Axiom Space, running AX-4, is a perfect example. Their stated long-term goal is building and operating their own commercial space stations.
And agencies like NASA, they're not fighting this. They're actually supporting and enabling it. They seem to see this as the future path.
They really do, according to the sources we looked at. NASA views missions like AX-4 as really crucial steps in trying to foster a robust commercial economy in low Earth orbit, or LEO.
Okay.
They're essentially using the ISS as a platform, kind of a pathfinder, to demonstrate that there is demand for commercial activity, to help these companies gain operational experience and show that private industry can safely and effectively run complex missions up there.
So the ISS becomes a stepping stone.
Exactly. The long-term vision, which comes through in the sources, is that commercial space stations, like the ones Axiom and others are proposing, will eventually take over from the International Space Station when it finally reaches the end of its operational life.
So AX-4 isn't just another crew rotation to the station. It's really a tangible step in this big transition where private enterprise is taking a front row seat in humanity's presence and our work in space.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how these private missions are simultaneously pushing innovation, they're expanding international access to space, and they're bumping up against and navigating those very real, practical engineering and operational challenges, like the launch delays we talked about earlier. It's a really complex and dynamic period.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean? The Axiom Mission 4 seems like a powerful snapshot of where space exploration is today. It's vibrant, it's international, it's privately led, it's pushing the boundaries of science and human capability.
Yeah.
Yet, as that journey just to get to orbit has shown us, it also really underscores the enduring complexities, the technical hurdles that are just inherent in operating this cutting-edge, reusable rocket technology, especially under demanding schedules.
And maybe that leaves us with an important question for you, the listener, to ponder as we watch this mission finally fly, hopefully soon. As the whole landscape of space exploration increasingly shifts from government-led programs into the hands of private companies driven by commercial interests, how might that change things? How might it change the pace of innovation, the types of science we choose to prioritize, and maybe most fundamentally, who ultimately gets to join that incredible journey beyond Earth?
Definitely a lot to think about as this commercial space revolution continues to unfold. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.